entire human population of human genomes, the 7 billion times 6 billion, it's only 2 petabytes, so 2 times 10 to the 15 bytes, which is pathetic. I mean, the internet in a day will be using up 1,000 times that much in traffic, and even fairly simple and in fact, we've got there's an effort at irony where people used to ask me, how are you going to store this data? And I used to say, well, I'll store it in DNA. And then I said, well, I should take myself seriously. And so we started storing digital information. It was not DNA sequencing into DNA, so kind of reversing the flow of information. And this is something I did with my own hands group and the purple gloves. And I was advised by my postdoctoral fellow, so he gave his stock off. He said I was his best postdoc so far. And I said I was also his worst postdoc so far. Anyway, I got first author on the science paper, and then since then, we're now scaling up to do it. We're doing a video with a major European data archiving company, and Sri at UCLA is doing an album for an amazing musical team called OK Go, for those of you who appreciate music. So we got data storage, but not quite handled, but I've shown you some of the issues around it. Data sharing's got to be even worse, and it's worse not just because it's big data, but because it's big human data. So I'm just going to quickly go through. Jason mentioned this, and I don't want to hammer too hard on it. But here's an example of the personal genome project that Jason mentioned was chosen by the National Institute of Standards Technology and the Food and Drug Administration in a whimsical project they call the Genome in a Bottle. .org, which is to set standards. Anytime any new company wants to develop a new diagnostic, a new instrument, a new protocol, and they want to make sure that their tests that they're doing can be compared to other tests from previous and future methods, they'd like to know that their bottle of DNA came from the same prep of DNA. So they're doing 24 of these, so 8 trios, 2 parents and a child, and they looked all over the world for suitable samples, and I wouldn't be telling you this if they hadn't picked ours as the only project goes properly consented for re-identification and commercial use. And so all of the reference genomes will be from these 8 trios, which are intentionally very diverse in ancestral origin. And then there are many other projects that have benefited from this. We've worked with NIH ENCODE, which is a way of looking at all kinds of epigenetic data. We'll be more on that later, but we've provided them with literally billions of cells so they can characterize fibroblastic stem cells, neurons, and so on, which was previously very hard for them to do. So now why is this project useful to so many groups? And it is because it's totally shareable. It is the most shareable data set in cells and synthetic biology on the planet. Possibly the world's only open access data set that combines medical data and genomic data. And it's because the way they consented, they have to get 100% on the exam. Very simple exam at this point. Wasn't when it started. When we started the IRB, wanted everybody to have a PhD in genetics, which I'm glad we got through that phase quickly. That's no longer the case for regular people. And we have these biobanks that include stem cells, not limited to them, mostly through Coriell. And so here's some of my cells that have been redifferentiated, so dedifferentiated in stem cells and redifferentiated to Verona rosettes as one of our favorite, and then individual bipolar neurons. And then this is my original brain before it was sliced by fMRI. It was all virtual slicing, not actual slicing. And the other reason the project is good is because you can keep adding additional. The more data that accumulates, the more valuable that cohort becomes, and so more groups want to do phenotyping and other measurements, molecular and otherwise. And so this has been recently launched as the Humus Project, which includes these 3 groups, but it's much more than this. At the annual GET conference, we've had up to 26 different tests being done on the people real time during the conference, all sorts of measurements. In addition to data storage and data sharing, is this once you have data sharing, you're in a much better position to look for variants of unknown significance. This is like the big gorilla in the room when it comes to clinical use of all this wonderful big data. How do we get a variant of unknown significance? I think that everything we've been talking about so far is needed for that. We need to be able to do genome comparisons, that high quality genome sequence, not shortcuts, in storage and sharing. But how do we deal with this big gorilla of variants of unknown significance? Some people feel that we really can't make progress without cohorts with n of 10,000 or more. The fact is, on a regular basis, we are forced to deal with cohorts of n equal 1. For example, this young child, 7 months old, who was born with myostatin double null, and rather than this being a truly unfortunate thing that you might expect of a double null of a highly conserved gene, it resulted in him basically having a musculature of Schwarzenegger coming straight out of his mother. But what you do when you have an n equal 1 problem, which is almost all the time, and since we all are unique, is you switch from correlation methods to causality methods. And one of the ways you do that is the animal models. In this case, 3 different, wildly different mammals, cows, dogs, and mice, and they all give exactly the same phenotype or very similar phenotypes that enhance muscle growth, decrease body fat, and decrease atherosclerosis. But those are animal models. the other alternative we have, slightly short of doing experiments on human beings, which is really is a much harder in a regulatory sense to get, and very hard to do for checking causality of deleterious alleles, is looking at organs or organoids. So these are diverse now, and at the Beast Institute, Don Ingber and Kip Parker, and we and others have worked together in other institutes as well to create about a dozen such tissues. Some of them are even though they're quite simple still, they're much more sophisticated than the tissue culture, which has essentially been static for about a century, which is just putting, spreading cells in a monolayer on plastic with tissue culture meter. For example, you get the mechanical forces of the lung, which it's very important that this pulses in a rhythmic way, or by pulsing in air in the top layer, and then epithelial cells, the boundary layer, and endothelial cells in the blood or blood substitute. And you can even have these little red dots indicate bacterial particles that can go in, or phagocyte cells that can go out through the endothelium and interact with bacteria. Similarly, in the gut, on the chip, also have bacteria. And normally, for those of you who don't do tissue culture, it's not common practice to put bacteria in with your mammalian cells. It's frowned upon. That's why you put pin straps in the media. But these are close enough to real that you can do this sort of thing. And then I'll show you a specific anecdote from the contractile part on the chip, where substrate has been made so you can get a fairly large contractile organoid and test it. Now you can think of there's two kind of reciprocal things that one can do with genome engineering. One of them is gene therapy, where you fix a deficit, and the other is modeling to determine a variance of unknown significance. And our favorite strategy these days for doing this is CRISPR or Cas9. I'm not going to go into that in much detail. Hopefully many of you have heard about it. But the idea is we start with these cerebral cells, like PGP1, or cells from my fibroblasts from my left arm, which have been then turned into normal human-induced pluripotent stem cells, and then into cardiomyocytes. And we do this with a piggyback excisable Cas9. The Cas9 is a protein that does the genome editing. It's tetracycline inducible, and there's a guide RNA and a repair oligo. So you've got these four components coming together: the genome, the guide RNA, which recognizes the genome, the Cas9 that does the cleavage as a protein, and then the repair oligo will go in and change it to whatever you want. And that allows you to test the hypothesis that out of 6 billion base pairs, this G missing is causing this devastating disease, Barth syndrome, which is cardiomyopathy, defective cardiolipin, and mitochondrial impact, and morphological and contractile consequences. That one G on the X chromosome. We can do a control, which is a mock-modified, no unmodified genome, and then one where we left out the donor DNA, the repair oligo. So basically you cut, but there's nothing to repair it, so the cell does its best by either inserting or deleting. In this case, inserted 8 base pairs, so that's a kind of a deleterious control. 0 is the base pair is the original. So this is, so we take these stem cells that we've altered with the CRISPR technology, either 1 base pair, 0 base pairs, or plus 8. And you can see the normal, where we haven't changed the genome, has this beautiful styrated cardiomyocyte-based tissue, which contracts. I'm not going to show you the movie, but it contracts at sort of the normal contracted rate, as it turns out. And then these are either disordered morphologically, the contraction is disordered as well. This was done in collaboration with William Koo, and who did the clinical part, Kip Parker, who did some of the organoid part. And then to complete the proof that this one base pair is the causative base pair, you can complement it in trans by putting in messenger RNA for the PAS gene, and getting restoration of this fairly well-ordered and normal contractile motion, as well as the cardiolipin and the mitochondrial. Now, I've kind of casually said that we changed 1 base pair in the genome, and it used to be that when you change 1 base pair in the genome, even for a very easy organism with a small genome like E. coli, you would change that base pair and PCR it and then see that it's been changed. And that would be considered pretty dramatic to really prove that you changed it. But then what my students do now is they sequence the entire genome, even if it's a human genome, and make sure they didn't change something else. And they'll do this multiple times for each clone, get a separate sequence. And sometimes you learn something from doing that. And in fact, one of the questions about the CRISPR technology, because it's shown that it's only about 2 years and a couple months old, is what is the off-target? And so we have rules, computational rules that are quite sophisticated, but as a rule of thumb that help you, hit it on one slide, is we try to put it on-target has 0 mismatches, meaning perfect match, and we try to avoid 1 or 2, because there is a chance that 1 or 2 mismatches, elsewhere in the genome, the CRISPR will cleave there. And then 3 is hard to avoid, so you tolerate some of those, but it will be there as well. And the frequency is about 5%. That is to say, if you collect together enough clones, 5% of the clones will have 1 off-target, or if you do it in a mixed population. But in this particular case, the software that we had written and we're using for various complicated pragmatic reasons, reasons, used as a reference genome. And we knew better. We had the reference genome for this mouse genome. And we knew, but nevertheless, the reference genome that was used for designing this experiment was, something anonymous out there, and just picked it up off the internet somewhere. And it turns out that reference genome does not have a SNP on chromosome 5 that I have. Heterozygous, this isn't just some piece of junk DNA out there. It happens to have this, well-characterized SNP, or at least had a name. I guess that's not really characterized. And what we were aiming for is chromosome X, leading 1Z, and instead this thing made a mess out here because and so there is a site there, and it is a huge background. So 36.7% of mutations that we found, relative to a little over 50% for the intended mutation, 36.7 were off target because we used the wrong genome. So the lesson here is, if you're going to do this kind of thing, at least right now, the current state of play, which will change in the next slide, but at the current state of play, you should use the right genome for designing your CRISPR. Not just because of the site you're trying to change, but all the sites you're trying to not change. Okay? But like I say, reality is going to change in just a moment here. But why is it important? What are we really worried about? You might see a lot of the literature, a lot of the people discussing about off targets for CRISPR, which I still haven't really shown you or told you about here. Hopefully you know about it. It's yet another gene therapy, in particular, yet another genome editing subset of gene therapy, rather transgenic. And what happened in gene therapy in general between 1996 and 2003 from this same group is they went from kind of ecstatic curing of so many patients with SCID X1 to two patients dying, P4 and P5, because they had insertions of the vector containing the extra copy of the gene that was missing. And they were inserting randomly all over the genome, and two of the places that really you don't want to insert is actually the O2 oncogene, which was inactivated and caused cancer. And these people's immune system were not in great shape for that. So what are we worried about for Cas9? Well, two kinds of Cas9, or many kinds of Cas9 therapy. Two classes we'll talk about is nuclease or repression, let's say inactivation. I just showed you an example of you would not want it to cleave and inactivate accidentally in any of the hundreds of tumor suppressor genes. They give a range depending on which literature you're looking at. And there's a similar number of human oncogenes, and for experiments where you have a dead Cas9 or Cas9 with an activation domain on it, you can activate a gene that you want to do therapy on. And it's awesome. Just like the problems that we had in design gene therapy in 1999. So if you do the math, and we don't need to really walk through it, but if you did combine delivery, this kind of worst case gene therapy situation, you've got this large number of cells, with a trillion, and then you've got fairly small mutational windows assumed here for the tumor suppressive oncogenes, and it's deployed, and it ends up taking around 1090 base pairs. The best, and this is not widely celebrated, I'm trying to celebrate this from another group, Keith Young's group, with whom we collaborated. They recently published the best known level of off-targets is 0 off-targets is 314 base pairs. So even close to, it's better than, we don't know how much better than 314 base pairs it is. We're starting our methods of detection of these off-targets are starting to fail us. And what we'd like to do, this will have to eventually give way to large, either large animals or large numbers of small animals, and then eventually human tests. Now, all that changes again if we can improve the specificity. So that's what's kind of almost off the shelf CRISPR from nature. You can change it in various ways. Theoretical, empirical dose optimization, which happened at the dawn of CRISPR technology, was first applied to a non-bacterial sequence in January 2013. But then more recently, paired nucleases and other paired dimeric nucleases messing around with the length of the RNA and the dose to result in many orders of magnitude improvement in specificity. Off the chart about it, this is already hard to measure. It's T × 10⁻14, so maybe 1,000-fold better, maybe more. If we could be, we're already where we need to be. Now, I'm just going to end this section on variants of unknown significance with a discussion of common disease, because the variants of unknown significance often happen in fairly rare, but also common. And the most common disease, one that all of you have, probably, is this aging. And this calcium drops to such a low level that you can never detect the tiny tail of it here, where between the ages of 110 and 120 are about 70 people in the world steady state. They pass on and they're replaced by other old people. But this is remarkable. These are some of them. We've been part of a consortium that's sequenced about half of it. And if, I think you see some smiles here. The lesson here is not that you should be smoking and drinking and eating lots of cake, but that they have lifestyles at least as bad as ours, and that they have some extreme alleles that help it out. So we'd like to study that. And in the meantime, we have many other ways of getting at potential variants of unknown significance, or variants that we might want to harness in various ways. And this is a completely different approach to the problem of rejuvenation or reversal of aging, where you do heterochronic parabiosis, where you suture together the circulatory systems of a young and old mouse. don't try this with your kids. And you find factors, and these can lead that cause rejuvenation of the brains, the vasculature, the skeletal and cardiac muscle, and then you can use this super biological assay to get at more biochemical components. And one of the first ones and early ones still is GDF11, sample of a protein and gene that reverses many of these age-related problems. In addition to that, there's progress in using messing around with the telomerase enzymatic activity, and also with third category and many others that looking at mitochondrial homeostasis. You can influence this via small molecules like nicotinamide, which is actually quite expensive because of the way it's administered and how frequently you have to do it. It's prohibitively expensive so far that can change. But an alternative way is to do gene therapy on the gene that's just upstream from it. Now, this is not the nuclease or genome editing that I showed earlier. This is an epigenetic modification. And in this case, we're picking something that's very close to this, the heart of this nicotinamide metabolic changes. So, for example, in mice, between 6 and 22 months, it drops by about a little over a factor of 2. And you'd like to be able to return that or get complete control over a wide range. So we carpet bombed the promoter upstream from the transcription start site of TPAM, which is in that pathway that I showed you, hoping that some of them, knowing that CRISPR activators and CRISPR nucleases as well vary from site to site in the genome. And so you do your best computationally, both to avoid off target, but also to maximize on target. And since this slide was made, we have much better software that can avoid some of these low activity sites. But in any case, back then, back in the ancient days of CRISPR 2 months ago, we would do it empirically, where we would basically synthesize all these different guide RNAs. It's very simple, just 20 base pairs, so you really can make hundreds of thousands of them. 2 and 4 is no big deal. I don't want to be sounding heroic here. But you can see one of them is a lot better. One of the 4 sites we target is a lot better. You get a little over 47-fold activation of the TFAM gene using endogenous DNA. We don't even have to use real regulatory sequences. We can just make it up. This is regulatory sequences by putting in this completely synthetic trans-regulatory element that comes from bacteria called CRISPR. Anyway, we get a 47-fold effect, which has a huge impact on the NAD levels here. Not the 2-fold effect that you see during aging, but 10-fold. So we can dial that back down to 2-fold if that's the appropriate level. But that's a 47-fold effect. There are other cases where we might want to have more. And sure enough, Alex Chavez, John DeShine, and Sue Bora from our group set out to do that for a variety of reasons. One of them having to do with we were trying to do neurogenesis, and the standard at the time, DP64 activation domain, fused onto this dead Cas9, the dead respective nuclease, live with respect to recognition of the genome. If you put on 3 different activation domains that might bind to different parts of the transcription machinery, you get huge enhancement over just any one of them. And in this particular order is the maximum. It also gives a nice acronym, which we call HYPER, for the first initial of each of these activation domains. And as an example here, you can get a 20,000-fold enhancement of HYPER. HYPER is not an arbitrarily chosen gene. It's the largest protein in the human body, and the largest gene, just the coding region alone, is 104 bases. So even if you put on cDNA, it doesn't fit into most viral vectors. Sulfide, factor 25 from our favorite viral vector. But you can make endogenous sequences in the cis-regulatory elements and enhance it by 20,000-fold. And you can do many genes at once. So here we are doing 4 genes at once, where we just use one activation domain or all 3 of them, DPNR, and you can get sort of 400 to 4,000-fold activation of 4 at once. Okay, so we now can engineer with CRISPR the genome, the epigenome. We now would like to analyze that, or just producing big data from large cohorts. We'd like to be able to do that in a systematic way, where we're not throwing away data. You'll see what I mean by that in just a moment. So we'd like to collect data on all the major macromolecules, DNA, RNA, protein, and not just counting them or quantitating them, and certainly not quantitating them in mixed cellular populations, but determining the proportion in 3 dimensions subcellularly in a multicellular context. And we might call this epigenomic imaging or fluorescence CT sequencing, which is what we generally call it. And the point is the cells are not generally spheres. They're asymmetric, and they have an asymmetric distribution of proteins and RNA, both going outward radially from the middle of the cell and also along the cell. Here's an axon, a neuron, which is particularly asymmetric, but I think many cells in your body have this asymmetry. So you want subcellular localization, not just grinding up the cell and then scattering RNA randomly on a sequencing flow cell, where you get all the sequence data and even can count it, but you've lost the 3-dimensional positions. So here are 2 human fibroblasts, which, and you can see the nucleus has this brighter circle in the middle, and each of those dots is a single RNA molecule, where we can amplify very lightly and compactly, so all we have to keep the stays in the really tiny dot. This is smaller than the resolution of the microscopes we use. And basically during cDNA, we cross-link them and form a hydrogel, a polymer form, which is rigid enough that we can address it over and over again, simply the same way you would for next-gen sequencing, but it's porous enough that the reagents can get in and out. And unlike next-gen sequencing, you might just image one layer. In this case, we do confocal, where we can stack the layers all at once, and so it's very efficient in terms of the cycling of the reagents. So in principle, this could be even lower cost than conventional sequencing of single cells, because you don't have to count each RNA over and over again, because they're truly where they belong, and you have amplified and introduced bias. They're the right number, the right location, and because you're doing this confocal stack, you have less reagents and less manipulation. And here's some examples of quality data where we're looking at a fairly long messenger RNA. This is fibronectin from the same fibroblasts. It's over 8 kilobases long. Sometimes challenging to study such long cDNAs, but in situ it's not hard. And you can see it's not completely flat, but we have good representation at every position in the cystogram, where these are reads on the y-axis. And this is the first experiment we did in fetal chromium serum, and we were a little concerned when we found that exon 25 was completely missing. All the other exons had some reads in them, but we pursued to finish the experiment. The experiment was a kind of a wound healing model where you straight through it and change media to epidermal growth factor containing media. And fortunately, at that point, we found quite a few reads from exon 25, and it was an example of a biological, not a technical artifact, but a biological alternative splicing, biologically significant. So we are in the process of scaling this. We're extending this from RNA to DNA and protein. We have plenty of data on each of those, and also to increase the number of reads that we get per cell. Now, to increase the number of reads per cell, we have these three methods. Nothing to go into great detail about, but one, the stratification is the most powerful of the three, I think, because no matter what your resolution is, the other two address resolution. No matter what it is, if you have one pixel or voxel that has the molecules interested in it, and you'd like to get multiple reads from it, by more stratification, you can do a sequence read, remove all that information, and then do it again. And so you can get multiple reads from one pixel, which I think is quite a cool trick. The super resolution, hopefully everybody's heard of this. You can get from sort of 400 nanometer as the diffraction limit to the order of 10 nanometers under good circumstances. And I think it even more, I just made a smile on my face. Rather than increasing the resolution, you actually just expand your samples. So we've been embedding samples in polymers like polyacrylamide, and since the 90s, certain classes of those polymers, like polyacrylate, will expand at low atomic strength, and it will expand uniformly in all three dimensions. And so your sample is not just plain bigger, and all the structure is maintained. And this is work from Ed Woody's group, Public Science. We've been collaborating with them for a year on adapting this for fluorescence sequencing. And it has the advantage that you can use conventional fluorophores and confocal microscopes. And to see super resolution, you need to query each fluorophore thousands of times to get, so you get averaging, so you can find the centroid of that fluorophore. While with this, you collect at 1,000 times faster rates, because you're just trying to find the fluorophore in a conventional way. And I just want to end on applying some of these concepts to another big data project, which is the Brain Initiative. This was, we were inspired to some extent by this Alan Brain Institute project a few years ago, where they did serial section through the mouse brain, doing one probing of one RNA per brain slice. The thing that's inspiring about this is they made it clear that you could do this over and over again. They went through over 1,200 brains in order to get about half of the messenger RNAs represented and almost none of the non-coding RNAs. But the point is that they could do this over and over, and they could get these serial sections and reconstruct the brain. But so that's the positive side. The negative is it's very hard to align these. You can align them for a given RNA, but two different RNAs from two different brains, and those two brains are exactly the same, even though they're from the great mice. And so you can't do you can do a regional overlapping. So this is the campus is about the bottom, but you can't do a neuron by neuron. So we feel that the in-situ sequencing method allows to do all the RNAs in one brain, gives the same number of serial sections, but instead of 400 brains, you can do the same information in one. And we would call this like a Rosetta brain, because all the information is there. It's the data problem becomes a much simpler problem, because the problem is not large amounts of data, it's the way that it's been done. And so if you get already integrated, so then you have pixel by pixel alignment already done for you. You don't need to make assumptions and skip over things. And that's the Rosetta expression analysis. And so here we have A, B, C, D, E. So you can take the expression analysis and they're perfectly aligned if you do it on one brain. But if you're going to do that, you do Rosetta expression, you might as well do Rosetta for everything else you might want to know about the mouse or primate, whatever behavioral system you're looking at. And so you can measure activity. Nothing I'm not going to go into right now, but it's a somewhat speculative technology where we're trying to encode for the ion channel or the early messenger RNA activity into nucleic acid, so they can determine it later by fluorescence sequencing for behavioral measurements that are done in a conventional way. We can get developmental lineage identifiers. These are barcodes that we can develop during the development of the organism. So each cell, as it divides, it causes diversity at these barcodes. And so each had his television. He had two daughters that played different barcodes, and it keeps going and going until, in the end, the entire mouse or other animal has every cell has its own barcode. But he can use those barcodes to send them out, the synapse-specific RNAs, out to the synapses, and then every synapse will be marked as the barcode from cell 1, the barcode from the cell it's attached to. Anyway, so we put all these together, activity, behavior, connectome, developmental, amazing expression, ABCDE, and that's a real Rosetta brain. It's not just transcriptome. And some of these things are described in these, high-profile journals like Archive and BioArchive. We're not ashamed to publish in preprints. And, here's some of the numbers. The topic of the talk is big data. We don't need to go through all these numbers, but I think the point of this is not that they're dramatically big numbers. They're remarkably bite-sized bites in terms of analyzing all these in one brain of a mouse and hopefully the other organisms. So I will, this is what we've been talking about. I'll leave you with this as we go into discussion. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank you for really a fabulous talk. And we can go over so you're not stuck behind the lectern. And I'm delighted that you talked about my favorite topic, especially the end, all of the implications for this for our most complicated organs. I think we'll take questions from the audience. Are there any? And then we also were tweeting and things.
Yeah, there's people going to have to turn over here as lots of people want to stay for hear the words of wisdom. So the people who have any questions, just leave. But yeah, we can start. So people who have questions, just come up to the microphone. So I know that was a tour de force of an amazing amount of data.
That was a really impressive talk, and maybe the one thing, since I'm not so computational minded, you do a lot of showing Moore's law and how accumulation of data knowledge works. If you had to plot the understanding on there, what would it look like?
So the question is, how would we plot understanding, and what would it look like? I would say that at the part of that curve where we're still on Moore's law, the 90s and 2000, there were one or two or a handful of genes that were frankly useful, and alleles, most notably in 1991, the first few were in very low on frequency. And I would not claim that everything that they diagnosed in that company, one of the mature ones, is accurate. They are still very significant, but they're back in that number now, going from 15 to about 4,000 genes that are in some sort of use. And for many of these are now scorpion drugs, which goes a little bit beyond understanding what you can do to therapeutic acid. And then, of course, genetic counseling is used in many of these cases to reduce disease-associated PACE without therapeutic counseling. I'm not being as numeric or quantitative as the plasma.